Well, folks, as you probably noticed, the show is very short today. There's a reason for this. There are things I can't say here, but if you head on over to Daily Wire Plus or the Ben Shapiro Show on Twitter, you can see the parts of the show we can't post here. Trust me, you want to check it out. It's spicy stuff. For now, let's get into the latest on Trump. And one of the most shocking moments in American history, President Trump showed up in Miami yesterday to plead not guilty in his arraignment. He's been arraigned on 37 charges, a 37-count indictment surrounding the mishandling of classified material, obstruction of justice, and other behavior surrounding his handling of classified documents. According to the Wall Street Journal, he lashed out at federal prosecutors and portrayed himself as a victim of political persecution hours after pleading not guilty in a Miami court to charges that he illegally retained and shared classified national security documents after leaving the White House. He said this day will go down in infamy. Of course, we went through the details of the indictment just the other day. The indictment does have some descriptions of activities that very likely transgress on the law if he actually is proved to have done those things. That leaves aside the question as to whether it is correct for the Biden DOJ to prosecute its chief political opposition. Again, two separate questions. There's the legal question as to what Trump did and did it violate the law? Because under that standard, Hillary Clinton also violated the law. And then there's the question of, is it good for the Biden DOJ? And it is the Biden DOJ. As I mentioned yesterday on the show, the simple fact of the matter is that that Jack Smith, the special counsel, it's not his fault that he's moving forward with a case that seems pretty clear-cut to him. The real question here is why the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, who's a political appointee who works for the President of the United States, Joe Biden, is moving forward with this case, given all of the political baggage that is arranged around this case. This is the first time in American history that you have a former president and current presidential frontrunner who is being actively politically prosecuted by the people in the opposing party. Trump is fundraising off of this. He's actually implying that he could receive a maximum sentence of 400 years in prison. He's just saying that in his fundraising letter. So there's the absolute possibility that he could die in prison if he were convicted of these charges, which is, again, an amazing thing to talk about. But that is where we are. Trump put out a letter saying, I honestly cannot believe I just typed those words to you. It sounds like something Stalin or Mao did to eliminate their opposition. Instead, it's happening here in America. Communism has finally come to our shores. And as always, two things can be true at once. One is that Trump may very well have committed the offenses for which he is indicted. And two is that we have never before in American history had a situation in which the current administration is prosecuting the former president who is the current political opposition. This has never before happened in American history. It's an extraordinarily ugly precedent. And to do so on the basis of mishandling of classified information, even if it's egregious, is insane and violates a precedent that is not going to be put back in the bottle. And this is where we are right now. Again, James Comey went out of his way in 2016 to say we're not going to prosecute Hillary Clinton because she's an active presidential candidate. And we are not going to involve ourselves in this election. And here you have the DOJ under the current president of the United States who just defeated Donald Trump in an election and presumably might have to run against him again, having Donald Trump indicted. It is indeed that simple. That is where we are right now. Apparently, Trump went into court. There were no cameras present because of all of the hubbub surrounding this. There was no mugshot. There was a lot of speculation as to whether there would be a mugshot. He got fingerprinted yesterday. And then he sort of did a political tour. So after he left, he went over to Cafe Versailles, which is a very hot political spot here in South Florida, sort of the center of Cuban life down here. It's a great cafe, by the way. They make an amazing cafecito. It's terrific. Trump goes there, and he's hanging out, and his supporters are singing happy birthday to him. So again, there's the legal issue, and then there's the political issue. And the fact that Trump is milking this for political gain, or that people are resonating to his call, that's not a particular shock. Here are his supporters singing happy birthday at Cafe Versailles yesterday to him.
What a great group of people. What a great group. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lawrence. Happy birthday to you.
Again, this is one of the most controversial prosecutions in American history, probably the most controversial prosecution itself in American history that we'll watch happening in real time. What is inexcusable from Trump here is the fact that he knew that they were gunning for him and he did this stuff anyway, right? That's the part that's inexcusable. You totally understand that there are two things, as always, true at once. He is being politically prosecuted here. If Hillary Clinton were in a similar position, she would not be, because she wasn't. If Joe Biden were in a similar position, he would not be prosecuted. Donald Trump is being prosecuted for that. Also, Trump knowing that they were coming after him and then specifically engaging in behaviors that made him more vulnerable to political prosecution, I don't know why he would do that. That's just bad judgment. But put that aside for a second. You can see the partisan lines being drawn here. Right? While these supporters are singing happy birthday to Trump, and the cameras were on him all day yesterday, from the time that he left Trump Doral, which is his resort down here. One of them, he has Mar-a-Lago, and then he also has Trump Doral. That's the one that's closer to Miami. From the time he left Trump Doral yesterday, the cameras were on his motorcade all the way to the courthouse, and they were on the courthouse until he left, and he went to Cafe Versailles. And you can see the media are just going to essentially convict him before the actual evidence is heard. Jake Tapper was watching this happen. He's like, cut away. We can't have any footage of Donald Trump actually being sung to at a restaurant. Why? Really, why? I don't understand. If you're a news organization, it is news. You don't have to love Trump to recognize that the former president of the United States, what he does the day that he is arraigned in federal court makes a big difference. You wonder why the right resonates to Trump. Part of the reason is in reaction to a media that seems firmly convinced that the best thing they can do is shut down anything that Trump says and does. And here is Jake Tapper saying, no, we're not going to have any of this footage of him being, people singing happy birthday to him. What?
Let's remember what this case is about. Let's remember what this indictment charges. Again, Donald Trump is charged with a series of federal felonies for mishandling the most sensitive government documents that we have and for obstruction of justice, along with Walt Nauta, who is charged with intentionally setting up lies to the grand jury, to the FBI. Any way you look at this, and again, despite whatever may be going on in that restaurant, this case isn't going to be settled legally in a cafe. It's going to be settled in the court based on the facts and law.
The folks in the control room, I don't need to see any more of that. He's trying to turn this in. He's trying to turn it into a spectacle, into a campaign ad. That's enough of that.
Okay, I don't understand even why that's necessary. I mean, but again, for the media, that's the whole point, is that if this were a Democrat, obviously they could campaign on that basis. If it's Trump, he can't. It is that sort of oppositionality that is leading to the reactivity of the right saying, well, hold up a second. We can all see what you guys are doing. Trump responded directly to Tapper, as you would imagine. He did so on Truth Social. He said, fake Tapper just demanded that his broadcast be closed down from Miami because there was far too much enthusiasm on the streets for Trump. The good news is he was the only one to do so. Perhaps a good explanation as to why CNN's ratings are so low. Again, this is the battle that Trump actually wants. The political battle, I think Trump has the upper hand with regard to sort of the narrative that he is being hit unfairly and that he has been targeted unfairly since he came down the golden escalator. That part's true. That is not going to answer the question as to what actually happens inside the courtroom. We'll get to that in just one moment. First, Congress has now been spending more money than any time in American history. They raised the debt ceiling again, which means they'll spend even more money. At a certain point, when all the bills come due, there are only a few things that can happen. One is that the American government can raise taxes dramatically, stagnating the economy. The other thing they can do is they can inflate the currency. The second is significantly more likely than the first because no administration wants to take credit for actually sinking the economy, which is just one reason you should be diversified into precious metals. Times like these are a great reminder to diversify a portion of your savings into gold. You can do that with the help of Birch Gold. They're who I buy my gold from, so do thousands of other concerned savers. As Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa band together the BRICS nations to move away from American currency, the way they are doing that is by reinvesting in precious metals. Text Ben to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold today. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. Take action today. Text Ben to 989898 to get started. Again, text Ben to 989898 and think about taking at least some of your money and diversifying into an asset that has never been worth zero, gold. Check out Birch Gold today. Okay, so yesterday, when Trump actually went into the courthouse, he came face-to-face with the special counsel, Jack Smith, who he has been ripping as a thug. Smith was originally appointed by Merrick Garland to lead the investigation into the documents. Apparently, they were both rather grumpy with one another. Smith is not the one who's actually trying the case. It's a guy named Jay Bratt, who leads the DOJ's counterintelligence division. He's the person who's the sole lead attorney in this case. Smith showing up face-to-face is something that Robert Mueller never did when he was going after Donald Trump. So there was this sort of dramatic moment where they faced off in court. Again, there are no pictures of it. But Trump then posted, quote, "This is the thug, overturned consistently and unanimously in big cases that Biden and his corrupt Injustice Department stuck on me. He's a radical right lunatic and Trump hater, as are all his friends and family who probably planted information in the boxes given to them." So, I mean, that's a hell of an allegation, is that they actually planted the information in the boxes. Is that going to be justified by further evidence? I have serious doubts. He's a radical right lunatic? So he's too far right? Again, these are not... This is not the winner for Trump. The winner for Trump is, why is Joe Biden bringing this prosecution? That is the political winner for Trump here. As far as the speed with which this trial takes place, Jack Smith has been saying that he wants this thing to happen fast, but all of these cases drag. I mean, they really drag. So we could be well into 2024 before this thing even hits a courtroom again. Stephanie Siegman, former chief of the National Security Unit of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, said, quote, in every case I had involving classified information, we never had a speedy trial. Siegman says this case will be designated complex because it involves classified information. So it could easily take months and months and months for this thing even to roll into trial at this point. So Trump left court. The first thing he did is he declared that he was being politically prosecuted. Again, this is going to be his political case. It's not going to bear any weight inside the actual courtroom. But as we've pointed out, even if he's convicted in a courtroom, even if he goes to jail, that does not bar him from being on the ballot. So the political case matters an awful lot. There's every possibility that Donald Trump could win the Republican nomination and then be in jail at the time that the actual election takes place. I should point out here, there's nothing illegal about you voting for Donald Trump at that point. Donald Trump is on the ballot. The only qualifications to be president of the United States is you must be 35 years of age and you have to be a natural-born American citizen. That's it. Those are the only qualifications. Eugene V. Debs, actually, back in the early 20th century, ran for president while he was sitting in jail for being a socialist. So you certainly could do it. And I have to admit that the spectacle of voting for Trump and then Trump winning and then being sworn in from his jail cell and then pardoning himself, I, Donald J. Trump, pardon Donald J. Trump. I mean, just on a pure humor level, that is some pretty amazing stuff. And since we live in God's alternative timeline, I wouldn't put my money against something like that happening. But Trump left the court. He says, I'm not guilty. Here was Trump's response immediately.
We got these guys right here. Thank you, everybody. Really nice. How did it go? I think it's going great. Okay, I think it's a rigged deal here. We have a rigged country. We have a country that's corrupt. We have a country that's got no borders. We have a country that's got nothing but problems. We're a nation in decline. And then they do this stuff. And you see where the people are. We love the people. And you see where they are. You see the crowds and everything else. We have a country that is in decline like never before, and we can't let it happen. I'm going to make a little speech tonight in Bedminster, and I hope you're going to be there.
Okay, so Karine Jean-Pierre, for her part over at the White House, she's denying that Biden had anything to do with the investigation, suggesting the DOJ is independent. No one believes this. No one believes the DOJ is truly independent because it isn't. You didn't believe it when Trump was president, and you don't believe it when Biden is president. It is Joe Biden's DOJ. Joe Biden runs it. Merrick Garland runs it. They're the ones who have to decide whether the prosecution takes place. They can get the recommendation and then turn it down. They have every ability to do that. By the way, on a pure political level for the United States, that would have been the smart move for Biden. Right? Well, imagine for a second, Jack Smith had come out. He said, listen, here's all the information against Donald Trump. I recommend indictment. And Merrick Garland and Joe Biden said, listen, we have an election season. He's my chief political opposition. In this country, we don't arrest our chief political opposition, even if we think that there's a high possibility that he violated the law, because the American people have to have their say. Imagine if Biden had done that. He certainly could have. It would have been a major political victory for him, but he can't. He can't. So instead, he's going to create and allow the narrative that he himself has signed off on the arrest of his chief political opposition. Here's Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday pretending that he had clean hands in this, which, again, he does not.
The president's opponents have accused him of weaponizing the DOJ. So just to be clear, can you say categorically that President Biden was not involved or influenced at all any of the decisions into indicting President Biden?
Not at all. He was not involved. The president has been very, very clear. The Department of Justice is independent. He wants to restore the independence of the Department of Justice, and that's what you've seen.
Yeah, they look like a real independent Department of Justice, which is presumably why Merrick Garland has been going after every police force in the nation and cramming down on parents a bunch of garbage about how they may be part of some sort of group worth investigating. And Merrick Garland, the fully independent, nonpartisan hack over at the DOJ. I truly believe that. Okay, in 1 second, we'll get to the media response to all this again. From a political level, the media response to Trump is going to drive him up in the polls because the media are just so terrible at this. We'll get to that momentarily. First, you need life insurance. It's the responsible thing to do. If you have dependents, God forbid something happens to you, you got to make sure that your family is taken care of. I have a lot of life insurance. My wife has life insurance. My business partners have life insurance, and you should have life insurance as well. You might think you have enough life insurance through your place of work. You don't, especially because if you have to move jobs, that probably goes away. You need independent life insurance. Head on over to Policy Genius right now. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $25 per month for $1 million in coverage. Some options offer coverage in as little as a week and avoid those unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius is licensed agents that work for you, not the insurance companies, which means they don't have an incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. There are no added fees. Your personal information remains private. Your loved ones deserve that financial safety net. You deserve a smarter way to find and buy it. Head over to policygenius.com/Shapiro or click that link in the description. Get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Shapiro. Again, policygenius.com/Shapiro. You need the life insurance that your family is taken care of. Do the smart thing. Head on over to policygenius.com/Shapiro and get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save today. Okay, so all of this is going down, and just like Jake Tapper, the rest of the media are also, obviously in the tank on this. Rachel Maddow over on MSNBC, she refused to cover the Trump rally last night. So Trump had a big rally last night at which he talked about all this. Again, is this just baseline newsworthy? Of course it's baseline newsworthy. Whether you love Trump or whether you hate Trump, it is newsworthy when the former president, who is currently under indictment and was just arraigned, holds a rally where he talks about the newsworthy thing. But Rachel Maddow's like, nope, we're not even going to expose you to the evil vitriol of President Trump. MSNBC is just too far above all of it.
We knew heading into this that he was planning to make these remarks. We are prepared for his pre-fundraiser remarks tonight to again be essentially a Trump campaign speech. Because of that, we do not intend to carry these remarks live. As we have said before in these circumstances, there is a cost to us as a news organization to knowingly broadcast untrue things. We are here to bring you the news. It hurts our ability to do that if we live broadcast what we fully expect in advance to be a litany of lies and false accusations, no matter who says them.
These people are a joke. I'm sorry, they're a joke. This is the reason why Trump has credibility. It's because of you. You guys are a joke. You're a sick joke. Oh my gosh, it hurts our credibility to broadcast things we know are untrue. How about 5 years of Trump Russia? How about endless speculation about Trump being a cat's paw of Vladimir Putin? That's not true. That doesn't stop you from broadcasting every single shred of it. It's just amazing stuff from MSNBC. And this is the reason why, again, when Trump says my political opponents are after me, he is not wrong about that. Again, when it comes to the actual charges, he could have done all the things alleged, and still he can be right that his political opposition is out to get him. So yesterday at his rally, Trump rolled out a couple of forms of defense. And then he talked about what he intends to do next. And that part's interesting. So he started off with his sort of quasi-defense. Quasi-defense number one is that he didn't know what was in the boxes when he took them. He said, under the Presidential Records Act, I had the ability to declassify everything, and I took the boxes, and I didn't know what was in the boxes. So number one, he himself says on tape that, they have him on tape apparently, and we'll find out if this is true in court or it's been selectively edited, but presumably, if the indictment is correct, he actively said that he had the power to declassify certain documents and he did not declassify them. So the Presidential Records Act, which is a civil act and not a criminal act, doesn't actually apply in this particular case. And then he says he didn't know what was in the boxes, which may well have been true when he took the boxes. Obviously, this happens with politicians all the time. They take boxes home. There's a bunch of stuff in them. They don't know what's in the boxes. But again, the indictment says that he went through the boxes personally, many of them, and then he tried to hide particular boxes of documents from his own lawyers. So him saying it now is, not particularly helpful. Here was Trump's defense number one. I didn't know what was in the boxes.
I wonder who it might have been. Dumped one of the very neatly arranged boxes all over the floor. They were full of newspapers, press clippings, thousands of pictures, thousands and thousands of White House pictures. The White House photographers, some are with us today. They took so many pictures, and we saved all of them, and they were in those boxes. Clothing, memorabilia, and much, much more. I hadn't had a chance to go through all the boxes. It's a long, tedious job. It takes a long time, which I was prepared to do, but I have a very busy life. I've had a very busy life. They make it more busy because you're always fighting.
Okay, so here's the problem. That may work politically. Again, I would have assumed that, except for the details in the indictment where it specifically says that he had, we have text from Walt Nauta, his aide, to other Trump employees, including Trump lawyers, talking about bringing boxes directly to Trump so Trump could personally go through the boxes. And then you have text between Walt Nauta and other people saying that certain boxes should be put aside and others handed to the lawyers. Right? That's why this case is a problem for Trump. Then he suggested that whatever Trump documents the president takes, he actually has a right to take. That is not true. So here's President Trump making this defense.
Under the statute, this responsibility is left solely to the President of the United States. Think of that. That's the decision. Think of that. No, just think of that. In other words, whatever documents the President decides to take with him, he has the right to do so. It's an absolute right. This is the law.
Okay, that's not true. The president has the right to declassify anything he wants to do while he is president. He does not have the right to take whatever documents, including classified documents he wants, from the White House and then later declassify them, he's not the president anymore. Right? So again, these are not going to be good legal arguments, but the argument that like this is too complicated for people and Joe Biden just wants me not to run, that argument I think is going to be pretty telling. Trump then went after Jack Smith. We'll get to that momentarily. First, let's talk about my dog. Okay, so our dog, Happy, he's a wonderful dog. He's very, very cute. Yesterday, he was home. He was running around the yard, having a good time. I thought to myself, I'm glad that we give him rough greens every morning so that he is healthy and happy. The dog food that you've been giving to your dog, not great. You need to boost it with rough greens. You don't have to go out and buy new dog food. Just sprinkle rough greens on their food every day. It contains all the necessary vitamins and minerals your dog is not getting from their regular dog food. Happy loves his rough greens. It is making him happy and healthy. Rough greens is the only supplement your dog will ask for by name. Rough greens, you get it? It's a joke. It's a joke. Well, naturopathic doctor Dennis Black, the founder of Rough Greens, is so confident this product will improve your dog's health, he is offering my listeners a free Jumpstart trial bag. Go to freeroughgreens.com/Ben. Let Rough Greens bring your dog's food back to life. That's free, RUFFgreens.com/Ben today, or call 833-MyDog33. That is 833-MyDog33 to try Rough Greens today. Again, go to freeroughgreens.com/Ben. That's free, RUFFgreens.com/Ben, or call 833-MyDog33. That's 833-MyDog33 today. Okay, so President Trump went on in this rally yesterday to rip on Jack Smith, who's the special counsel. Here's what he had to say.
It's no wonder this raging lunatic was shipped off to The Hague to prosecute war criminals using globalist tribunals, not beholden to the Constitution or the rule of law. Two things Jack Smith clearly disdains. You take a look at this guy. He looks like a thug. But then I watched him make a speech the other day, and he was trembling because it wasn't his territory. He feels much safer in the inner sanctums of the Department of Injustice, where he can be in his room and scream at people.
Okay. Is that going to truck a lot of weight inside the courtroom? We have to separate the two. I'm going to keep separating the two. I understand there are a lot of people on the right who don't want to separate the two. They want to conflate them, and then they want to suggest that because Trump is being politically persecuted, true, this means there's no legal case against him. False. Okay, that is not the same thing. And there are a bunch of people on the left who want to suggest the opposite, that because there may be legal credibility to the charges, true, this means that he's not being politically persecuted. False, right? Those are two separate questions. And they have two separate ramifications. One is that he may very well get convicted on these charges. And the second is that he may very well be a fully durable nominee for the presidency of the United States despite all of that, or maybe because of all of that, because there are a lot of Republicans who are responding to this by saying, if they're after him, that means that we should support him. Now, again, I don't think that's good logic. And I'll explain why I don't think that's good logic in a second. But Trump also is vowing now that he's going to prosecute Biden. And this is the can of worms that the Democrats have opened. Joe Biden opened this can of worms. Once you say this for Trump, when Trump took office in 2017, he did not lock Hillary Clinton up. He did not direct his DOJ to lock Hillary Clinton up, even though, again, those charges were very much on the table. He didn't do it. I assume the reason he didn't do it is because he went to his attorney general, at that point it was Jeff Sessions, and he said to him, should we do it or should we not? And Jeff Sessions probably said to him, it's a really, really bad idea in America to prosecute your chief political opposition. I assume that's a conversation that happened because Trump talked throughout the campaign about the possibility of locking up Hillary. People were literally chanting it. Joe Biden has now broken the seal. Once the seal is broken, it cannot be unbroken. So here is Donald Trump vowing to prosecute the Biden family. And guess what? This will happen. Sooner or later, someone from the Biden family will be prosecuted by a Republican in a position of power. Here's Donald Trump.
This was an unwritten rule. You just don't, unless it's really bad. But you just don't. But the seal is now broken. In addition to closing the border and removing all of the criminal elements that have illegally invaded our country, making America energy independent and even dominant again, and immediately ending the war between Russia and Ukraine, I'll have it ended in 24 hours. I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and the entire Biden crime family.
Again, this is what is going to be on the ballot now from here to the end of time, apparently. Now that this has happened, every time you vote, you have to decide whether you want somebody to go to jail from the opposition party. That's what this is going to be. That's a dangerous place to be. Okay, Brazil is doing that now. Lula wants to jail Bolsonaro. If Bolsonaro gets into power, maybe he jails Lula, right? No one knows. That's a dangerous place for any democracy to be. Joe Biden broke that seal. It's egregious. Once you break that seal, it cannot be unbroken anymore. Now, does this mean that Republicans should nominate Donald Trump for the presidency? Again, I understand the emotional appeal of they're going after him. the best way to protect him is to nominate him, which may or may not be true because, again, if he loses, it doesn't really help very much. And the question is whether this is going to have a salutary impact on his candidacy. The reason I say that the logic here is not particularly good is twofold. One, Donald Trump is a person who steps into bear traps. Right? To be smart about how you do politics is a quality that you look for in a successful politician. When you know, again, this is the thing about what Trump did with the classified documents I can't wrap my head around really. When you know that they are gunning for you, when you know, as is true, Donald Trump is right, that they were gunning for him full time. They literally spent tens of millions of dollars and years on end gunning for him over Trump-Russia stuff that was garbage. When you know that's the case, wouldn't you be like 10 times more careful? Wouldn't you try to avoid that so that you could be the best possible weapon against their ideology? Or would you go to a bunch of silly nonsense with regard to documents that you don't need? Which would you do? And Trump, because he's very blithe about everything, he just goes and he does the latter. Is that the methodology that you want in the presidency? That's a serious question. Is that someone who's going to methodically, day by day, go through and clear out the executive department of all of the dreck in there? Is that somebody who's got any methodology to his madness at all? That's question number one. And then there's question number two, which is, do you think that he is likely to be elected on the basis of this? Because I promise you, now that he has been indicted and arraigned, and now that this case is probably going to drag on through the election, by the way, this won't be the only case. I assume that there will be indictment forthcoming in Georgia also with regard to alleged election interference and all the rest of it. I assume this is not the end of the charges. I assume there will be more coming for Trump on a variety of fronts. Most of it trumped up, I would assume. But if that's the topic of the election, do you think Trump wins the election or do you think Trump loses the election? Because here's the thing. Joe Biden is, in fact, a target-rich environment. Joe Biden is running an extraordinarily radical administration. Despite his image as a doddering old man who's unthreatening, Joe Biden is a deeply threatening president of the United States. His administration is malevolent, and that's particularly true on social issues. He is going after children. He's going after families. The topic of the day, the thing I should be talking about at the top of the show today should not be Donald Trump in front of a court. The thing I should be talking about to lead the show today should be the predations of the Biden administration, which get worse and worse day by day. And here's the thing. If people are not talking about that and they're talking about Trump, who do you think skates? Joe Biden's entire electoral strategy in 2020 was, I will hide in my basement and you will talk about Trump. And that worked. And that is his strategy, again, as the sitting president of the United States. He will hide in his basement and he will assume that you will talk about Trump. And Trump loves talking about Trump, so Trump will talk about Trump. Is that a good electoral strategy? Again, I'm not asking about your emotional resonance to Trump. I get it. I do. What I'm asking about is who is most likely to win? The person who is focusing fire on Joe Biden, not for his own personal defense, but because Joe Biden is a very bad president, or the person who's spending all day talking about how Jack Smith is a thug and how his documents were perfect and all the rest of that. Like, what is more likely to win? When the issue is the Republican loses. When the issue is the Democrat loses. Who is more likely as a candidate to make the issue the Democrat? Donald Trump or anyone else? And the answer right now is clearly not Donald Trump. Okay, meanwhile, again, the Biden-Harris White House, they are vulnerable on a score of topics. One of those topics, inflation. We'll get to that in just one moment. First, let's talk about something you can do for your family. Okay, so my parents a while ago, in their garage, they had a bunch of old film reels. They had a bunch of old VHS tapes, and those things are just sitting there moldering. So what did I do? I went to my friends over at Legacy Box. I got a Legacy Box. I loaded up the Legacy Box with all that stuff. I sent it in. It's now back and digitized. My parents can make copies of it. They can distribute it. They can get it to the kids. It's amazing to uncover and unlock all of those old family memories. That's what Legacy Box does. I'm doing it for my in-laws right now as well. Legacy Box has helped my dad preserve and relive some of his most treasured memories using their all-in-one kit. We sent in his old tapes and film. Their team of experts digitized them by hand with the utmost care and attention in just a few short weeks. He got back the originals along with beautifully crafted digital copies he can easily share with family and friends. And again, it's incredible to be able to unlock all of those old memories that were hidden on versions of film that you literally could not watch. If you're like me, you want to keep your memories alive, I highly recommend Legacy Box. Makes an amazing Father's Day gift. Legacy Box is offering my listeners an incredible $9 tape offer that's over 60% off. It's an exclusive offer for my listeners. Visit legacybox.com/Shapiro. Shop $9 tape and film transfers. There's a limited quantity available and they are selling fast. That is legacybox.com/Shapiro. Also, if you're looking for something interesting to watch this weekend, check out our series, What We Saw, hosted by storyteller Bill Whittle. Season 1 focused on Apollo 11. Season 2 of What We Saw is about the origins and key events of the Cold War. Look into the Berlin blockade, the Korean War, the death of Joseph Stalin, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Vietnam War, Watergate, and the ultimate resolution of the Cold War under Ronald Reagan. Don't just read about history, live it. Bill makes you feel like you're there witnessing history. All episodes of Cold War are now available to stream. You have to be a Daily Wire Plus member to see it. Head on over to dailywire.com/Cold War to start watching. So yesterday, the new inflation stats came out. And the new inflation stats, again, this is year over year, clocked in about 4%. So the White House immediately put out a tweet. Quote, great news. Today's inflation report shows annual inflation is now at the lowest level since March 2021 and less than half of what it was last June. This is giving families real breathing room. No, it's not. No, it's not. So they then tweeted out a graphic. It says inflation has fallen by more than half since last summer. The problem is that they made a mistake. They put the dates going all the way back to July 2020 on the inflation rate in the United States. And so we added in a helpful little hint here. Where Joe Biden took office. Do you see where Joe Biden took office? It's a red arrow. Do you see what happened to inflation after Joe Biden took office? Oh, look at that. Went up to 9%. And now it's back down to 4%. But you know where it's supposed to be is between 1 and 2. So it's still twice what it normally would be. By the way, when we talk about the rate of inflation, we don't mean that the prices have come down. We mean the rate of the prices going up has gone down. Meaning it was going up at a rate of 5% last month. Now it's going up at a rate of 4%. So it's still going up. So yeah, do you feel the breathing room? No one feels the breathing room. This administration, again, they have a lot of vulnerabilities. This is an administration that is still pushing COVID nonsense. Rochelle Walensky, head of the CDC, she was asked about the science on masking children. And she was like, I run a science-based agency. No one believes you.
Did political pressure ever impact your CDC guidance on your public statements about the COVID-19? Did you ever feel like you were making statements based on political pressure rather than the science that was available?
I run a science-based agency. I'm a scientist, and the statements that I made are defended by the science.
Oh, yeah, that's what they've done all along. It's just the science. Kevin Kiley, Republican congressperson from California, asked Xavier Becerra, the head of HHS, about the science. Said, did it help to mask 2-year-olds? And Becerra's like, we didn't tell people to mask 2-year-olds. Like, yeah, you did. He's like, well, no, we didn't. It's like, well, yeah, you did, though.
We provide a mask mandate, a requirement for jurisdictions that wish to receive money to provide particular services.
So Head Start did have a mask mandate for kids, yes?
We had a mask mandate for for agencies that wish to get federal dollars.
So that's a yes. So
services.
Can you point to any benefit,
that's not a yes to
any
your
public
question.
health benefit from that policy, whether it was recommended or enforced or forced, of requiring young children to wear masks?
Did families benefit from the policy of using all protection, all precautions to avoid
No, I'm not asking you to
COVID?
rephrase my
Yes.
question as some abstract question that you'd rather answer. I'm asking that you, as the person who's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, right now, can you point to any evidence that there was a public health benefit to forcing young children to wear masks?
Well, the fact that today we are not losing lives the way we lost them when we first got into this pandemic.
And you think that's
is a
because we
clear
forced
sign.
2-year-olds to wear masks?
Yeah, the answer is yes. He thinks that, but that's because they're stupid. Again, the vulnerabilities for the Biden administration are endless. Will Republicans make the most of that, or will they not? Okay, time for a quick thing I like. So the thing that I like today is there are going to have to be some gatekeepers in the church community. One of the great stories of the last 50 years is the decline of church in the United States and abroad. One of the reasons for that is because churches decided to make their peace with social leftism. They decided that it was really important to give ground to the social left because that way they could keep the pews full. What they failed to understand is the entire draw of churches saying, here's an eternal value, and we are going to continue promoting this eternal value even in the face of the vicissitudes of social and political movements who hate our guts. We're going to stick with our guns because what we have to say is true. And a bunch of churches, synagogues, even some mosques, many of these places decided, no. What we have to do is we have to make some sort of concessions to the social liberal movement, and then people will keep coming to church. What they neglected is that the closer they came to social liberalism, the more people were like, why am I even going to church? You know what I could do on a Sunday morning is stay home and watch football and not go to church. You know what's really boring? Church. You know what's uncomfortable? Church pews. You know what's bad? Church music. You know what I could do? Go somewhere else. And so all these churches who have gone back to traditionalism are doing really well. Traditionalist Catholic churches are filling the pews. Orthodox Jewish synagogues are filling the seats. So more religions going back to, traditional ways of life and rejecting the conciliation with left-wing social movements, that's a good thing. So according to the New York Times, a bad thing, of course. So they're very upset because Southern Baptists are moving to purge churches with female pastors. Now, it's been a long-standing thing in a lot of mainstream religions that positions of religious authority in communities, like rabbis, for example, or priests or pastors, these are supposed to be male positions. And the reason for that is because males are generally more extroverted. Males are generally people who are capable of taking an enormous amount of flack, right? There are differences between males and females, and those are reflected in biblical views of the roles of males and females. Doesn't mean that women don't have the capacity for leadership. Obviously they do. I mean, if you go back to the biblical story of Deborah, right? Deborah actually leads the Jews in battle. If you go back to the ancient Bible, Miriam is a leader in the Old Testament. And so there are certainly female leaders who have leadership capacity, but the general rule of religion has been that the pastor or priest or rabbi of a community will be male. And there are reasons for that are deeply ingrained, not only in quote unquote the patriarchy, but in the differences on a general level between men and women. But this is unacceptable in the modern era. And so churches who have decided to conciliate, those are the ones that are emptying out. Well, the Southern Baptists are like, we're not going to do this anymore. According to the New York Times, convention officials decided to expel a church that had appointed a female pastor, along with 4 other congregations that have female pastors, including one of the most prominent in the country, Saddleback Church, based in Southern California. The right wing of the Southern Baptists, the largest Protestant denomination in America, is now cracking down on what it sees as dangerous liberal drift. Most people in the denomination have long believed the office of head pastor should be reserved for men. But an ultra-conservative faction with a loud online presence is going further, pressing for ideological purity and arguing that female pastors are a precursor to acceptance of homosexuality and sexual immorality. Now, that would seem like a far-fetched argument, except for the fact that it is not. That typically, religious denominations that move significantly to the left on small things tend to move significantly to the left on the big things as well. If religions, want to have any sort of lasting durability, they're going to have to stick with the one that brought them. All right, guys, the rest of the show continues right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be joined on the line by former Vice President and current presidential candidate Mike Pence. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click the link in the description and join us.